Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us for Coffee with emPerform, a live demo series we're hosting every Thursday in February to help get you familiar with emPerform. Today's session will be focused on online reviews, self-assessment, and ongoing feedback in emPerform. I'm going to show you some features that we use with our clients and what's popular. Just a small reminder, we will be touching on a number of different topics over the coming month. So as you can see, today's will be followed by compensation reviews and pay for performance on February 14th, a special day with 3 hearts there on Valentine's Day. So keep your calendars up to date, and you'll see some different topics appear over the coming sessions. And of course, as every session goes, we will be providing Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts gift cards, so watch out for those this afternoon. Just a little bit about me before we get started. I've worked with emPerform for the last 15 years. I've been involved in many of our implementations and, have done some presentations with SHRM as well as HR.com on the topic of performance management. So, I sort of come at this from somebody who's been involved in many of these situations, and really what I've learned and what clients are doing and what is popular nowadays is what I'm going to try to bring to today's presentation. In terms of the agenda, just before we get started, we're going to do a quick review here on performance reviews and self-assessments and the common challenges there, the benefits. We'll talk about the benefits of ongoing feedback, and we'll do a little bit of an introduction to emPerform. We'll show you around a little bit and show you some of the features like tag and some sample reviews that'll help you get an idea of how we put all these pieces together. Today, we're going to be focusing on online reviews and ongoing feedback, but I want to point out that our solution, emPerform, comes with a lot of different features in it. And one of the things that's important here is that everything that we do in emPerform is included. So we help organizations not only get started with performance, but really broaden the performance management process to include other items like talent reviews and compensation planning and 360 feedback. And again, there's going to be sessions coming up on all of that stuff in the future. But today, for our focus now, we're going to look at online reviews and, of course, ongoing feedback. There are some great resources available. Some of these some of these I've done myself, and recently did Reviving the Performance Review and Alignment of Performance and Comp on HR.com. So, take a look at our resource page there. We've got a great rating scale guidebook that's available. And of course, that's something that you can go ahead and look at as well. So why are we here? What do we hear every day from clients and prospects that we speak to? And, we hear a lot about the challenges of the existing performance review process. Legacy review forms that aren't valuable anymore to employees. They're stuck in a once-a-year process that's used, haphazardly in the organization and in an unstructured manner. Some managers do it well, some don't. Some employees are engaged in it, and most are not. And typically what comes back is that people we talk to know that there's something better out there, and they really want to move the organization to something better because they believe that performance management can have a tangible impact, not only on organizational results, but of course on employee engagement and overall employee satisfaction. So, this is a big part of what a lot of HR departments are looking at nowadays. And I think it's really fairly easy to understand what the challenges are. Probably those of you on the call or those of you watching this understand those challenges, and that's one of the reasons why you're here. The big question and one of the big themes that comes out, and probably the biggest change we've seen in the last 15 years being involved in emPerform, especially when we talk about performance, is that it's really moving now from more than once a year. And that seems obvious, right? But there's so much focus right now on continual feedback, on ad hoc and monthly check-ins, and really just trying to make it not be a once-a-year process. As HR folks always say to me, it's to keep performance top of mind throughout the year. And I think that's really what we're trying to achieve here in the new world. With emPerform, what we do is bring to the table a conceptual framework that, I don't think, certainly we didn't invent this, and there may not be much new here, but the idea is that, we set the stage for effective performance. We encourage check-ins on an ad hoc or scheduled basis throughout the evaluation cycle so that when we get to the end of it, we're really prepared for that end-of-year review. And if we've done things, during the year, if we've met, there should be no surprises at the end of the year. When we get into review discussions and performance reviews with employees, everybody sort of knows where they stand. Now, the great thing with emPerform is that it does more than appraisals. It can certainly help drive talent reviews, 360 feedback, compensation decisions, succession, promotion, all of those things. And again, we're going to cover those in future sessions. So we have lots of things to talk about today. But before we sort of get into showing you some of the sample forms, let's just talk about the 7 benefits of ongoing feedback. It allows for timely course correction. It makes it easier to track overall performance and engagement. It's a good excuse to interact with employees. Goals are more likely to stay on track and relevant. And I think that number 4 point is one that's important, especially when we look out into the world to see what bigger companies are doing. And some of these bigger organizations that are getting a lot of press with changing up their performance management processes, some would say they're getting rid of it. One of the things that is there at the central heart in all of them is goal management. And goals and objectives remain a very important part of sort of traditional performance appraisal, as well as what we'll call the new wave of performance appraisal that's out there. Goals are really, really there. And one of the great things about establishing goals and objectives is that it gives us a foundation to come back and have, ad hoc check-ins and talk to people about how they're achieving their goals. So some of our clients will say, if we're going to introduce ad hoc check-ins, how do we structure them? How do we train the employee and manager to know what to discuss? And actually, you could make it very simple here to say, if you establish a good goal plan, the goals that are planned can become the basis of the discussion. Of course, addressing performance issues is easier done in small doses, and I think it's also important that it's done as it happens rather than many months later. Annual reviews end up being easier, and you know what? There's a good point here. If we're doing regular ongoing feedback as part of the process, then the annual review can be more forward-looking than sort of backward-looking, and that forward orientation is really important. And of course, employees want to know how they're doing. I think all employees out there really want feedback, and certainly there's lots of research out there to help us understand that that's the case across different employee segments, age groups, etc. So I want to just jump into our sample review and show you around emPerform a little bit, and just show you some different forms and how people are addressing their performance management needs, from ongoing feedback and check-ins to just automating performance review. And so, we're logged into emPerform right now, and I'm logged into a sample site. And there's a couple of really key pieces that are here. First of all, in a modern performance management system like emPerform, you can simply click on someone's name and you'll see information about them right away. So their profile will pop up and it tells you, who they are and, maybe their educational background and some important parameters that HR can control and have available. One of the things we love about profiles in emPerform is that they're linked to a full profile view. And when you click on that full profile view, you sort of see a manager control center here, all the different appraisal forms that are available and, the status of them. The full performance history of the employee is available at your fingertips, and you can go back, and in this case, I can go back and look at Ashley's performance history from all her time in the organization. Performance reviews follow the employee through their career at the organization. So, this becomes a really important part of emPerform. Now, as I said at the beginning, emPerform has lots of pieces in it, but today we're really focused on appraisal and ongoing feedback. So I want to talk a little bit about that. The substance, as I just mentioned, for ongoing feedback oftentimes is setting a plan for performance. And so when we talk about setting a plan for performance, we like to talk about things like easy goal setting, where we log in and we look at some goals and objectives, and you know what, I can come into my performance review at the beginning of the year. I can see goals that have been added by my manager, or perhaps they've been assigned by HR. There might be company goals here that everybody in the organization has to achieve, and you could read about the goal by simply clicking on it. Okay, in this example, we're using a SMART goal framework so we can see the specific, measurable, attainable, relevant and time-bound attributes of this goal. One of the great things about goal setting in emPerform is we could also have divisional, departmental, or organizational goals that as an employee, we add to the review. So we might publish a library of corporate goals, and we'd come in and say, hey, you know what, I've got to pick a goal from here, a number of goals from here perhaps, and talk about how I'm going to support them. It might be just that I'm going to come in and look at marketing goals because I'm in the marketing department, and I'll have a listing of goals here, and I'm going to pick them up and talk about how I'm going to support them. Another option for goal setting in emPerform that's really easy is you click the Add New button and you come in and add a new goal. And the great thing about adding a new goal, it's quick and easy. You can link or align it to an organizational objective. You can give a completion date for it. And one of the things I like the most about it is that as a manager, you also have the option to cascade that goal at the click of a button. So I can share the goal I just created with May and Chris, simply click the cascade button, and now that goal that I've created not only is part of my own goal plan, but it's part of their goal plan as well. And so I think this is a really important part of performance management. And when we talk about the ongoing communication dialogue that happens between an employee and manager, we really want to think about what are they going to talk about when they meet. We want some structure around it, and certainly an active goal plan is a great way to do it. Now, in the world of goal management nowadays, as you can appreciate, goals don't just die. They live on. They can be changed throughout the course of the year. They can be updated. They can be abandoned for business reasons. You can put statuses on them. So again, it's just a really effective way to document our progress through the year. And so let's just talk about what that looks like. If we've done sort of goal planning and we've set a goal plan, then what are we actually going to do? And there's a few different things we might do here. So for instance, we might develop a quarterly review plan. So here's an example of another different form, and quarterly reviews become very popular with our clients. So I open up Harlan's. When I open up Harlan's quarterly review plan, you can see again as a foundational mechanism, the objectives are there. The employee's keeping a status of the objectives up to date. Okay, I could go through and add comments as a manager. I would meet with Harlan to discuss these objectives. And when I do, it might be as simple as coming in and adding some quarterly progress notes. And if we come in and add some quarterly progress notes, the great thing is, we're documenting progress quarter by quarter through the year so that when we get to the end of the year, we've got a nice documentation on what we met, what we discussed, how the plans changed. And, this is a great way to capture a quarterly feedback. And as you can see, it's simple and easy. It's not big and onerous. It's not a huge form. There's, an opportunity for the employee to go in and add some notes and some statuses, and for the manager as well. Another thing that's popular when this sort of quarterly check-ins or ad hoc check-ins is that we can do, different types of review forms as well. And so one of the things that I might want to look at here, for instance, is Ashley's performance review. And in Ashley's performance review, when I go click on that, again, I might have goals that are sitting there and that can be updated. But, maybe there's a competency review that's going to happen because we want to talk about behaviors and we want to talk about what people are observing. We can do things like, again, one-on-one check-in meetings, and we can say, hey, we had a one-on-one check-in, and, here's a series of notes we took from when we had those check-ins. We met in October, August, September, October, and, just quick notes to say, we met, we talked, we went over things. And it's really easy to build that in. Now, as we get more sophisticated when we talk about ongoing feedback and sort of move into what I'll call the modern world, what a lot of clients are doing, it's true continuous feedback. And so there's two elements to this with us. We do this through this application called TAG. And when we talk about continuous feedback, we talk about two things. We talk about journal notes, performance journals, and we talk about tags. So when we talk about performance journals, it goes like this. You come in and enter a journal note. And journal notes are private and confidential to the person that is making them. No one else can see your journal notes. So I can come in and make a journal note at any point. I sometimes take journal notes when I'm standing in a lineup at the airport waiting to get on a plane. I pull out my phone, emPerform's mobile enabled, and I can take a quick note like a reminder, almost as fast as sending a text message. I can catalog journal notes about a specific employee. So if the journal note, for instance, is about Ashley, I can go tag it against Ashley's name. And what that means is that when I get to that quarterly review step, or when I get to the end of the year, I could come in and I can quickly take a look at all the journal notes for a specific employee. Okay, so in this case, I'd be able to go look at all of the journals I took on Ashley, and really that's giving me sort of a history of observation that I've taken. I mean, at the very heart of best practice of performance management, as you know, this is what we want employees and managers doing, because we want to get away from recency bias and all those, all those things that destroy the credibility of the performance management process. So bringing people in on an easy to use basis to take notes is a really smart thing to do. Now, the second option gets more interesting, because the second option here is that you can actually send feedback to the person. So in this case, I'd be typing up feedback for Ashley. I'll give her some stars here. I'd send it to her. I have an option here to send it as well to her manager. And I click send. What happens in this scenario? Our friend Ashley gets an email that says, "You've been tagged in emPerform. Click here to read the feedback." And when Ashley clicks on the URL or the link in that email, it's going to bring her to her feedback wall, where she's going to see the feedback that's been provided to her. And, if this has been sent only to her and hasn't been shared with her manager, then she'll have an option to unlock this feedback, which will automatically share it with her manager. If it's already been shared with her manager, it'll come in as unlocked. And so really what this starts to do in the performance management process, of course, it's a mechanism for continuous feedback, but how it's being used at our clients is really in a positive manner. And I think that's the most important part of it. People use it to say, "I saw you at your best today." This replaces the yellow sticky note that people would put on somebody's office door to say, "Great presentation," or "Great job in that meeting," or "You did this really well," or "Great feedback from a customer." This now replaces that. And I think the important part of it is it's being used to bring a lot of positive energy to the performance management process. We can go sort of best practice on all this and go a little bit more extensive with how we use tag, because if tags and journals are observations of performance, then one would say we should use them to support our ratings and comments at the end of the year. So for instance, let's just drill back into Ashley's review for a second, and I want to show you something. Suppose that I've gone in and I'm going to give her a rating here on a goal. She had to host, monthly lunch and learn events. And so it gets to the end of the year. I can go back and look at how we set up that goal at the beginning of the year. I can see what comments she's put in throughout the year and at the end of the year, but ultimately I've got to give her a rating. And we're using, in this case, an achievement scale on goals, because there's a whole thing there on rating scales, and our guidebook that I mentioned at the beginning deals with this, that there's a lot of confusion out there about rating scales nowadays. Should they be numbers? Should they be words? Anyways, you can take a look at that guidebook, and it'll give you lots of examples and best practice advice. But here's the key. I'm going to give her a rating. I might add some comments, but if we're using continuous feedback, I can click a button. And now I can read comments that have been, supplied by other people. I can see my own journals that I've put in there, and I put one in about the lunch and learn session. But here's the thing. Her peer or colleague, Kim, also gave her feedback about how well organized her lunch and learn session was. So I'm picking up both of those and just saying, you know what, I'm going to add them here. And so what those will do is those will support my comments. And I think this is really, really key, because if you think about this continuous feedback element, we said positive energy, real-time feedback, it's happening, that's good. But performance management at its core is supposed to be about observation, right? It's not supposed to be about judgment. It's supposed to be about observation. And if we believe it's about observation and we want to help people improve by observing them in the work environment, then tag totally fits with that. And that's why I think you see so much emphasis on continuous feedback. It's not just a fad. It's not going to go away. It's here to stay. We look at big companies out there like General Electric that have built a whole new performance management architecture and process around an app. GE does it with an app where you go in and ask each other for feedback if you work there. Basically, that's what it does. It collects continuous feedback. That's their new performance management platform. You can read about it. I think it's called PD at ge.com or PD at GE. performance development at GE. That's the name of the app, and there's articles out there on it. So take a look at it. I talk a lot about that in that Reviving the Performance Review webinar that we put up there on the page at the beginning as a resource. So again, this is really important, and you think about sort of the traditional old-fashioned appraisal in the Word document where you give a rating and you write some comments, and then this just sort of brings it to life, right? It just brings more people into the process, and it just makes it more real. So this is what we talk about when we think about continuous feedback. It's an important element of it. We have clients, by the way, that they use ad hoc check-ins, and instead of having a box on a page to document the ad hoc check-in, when employee and manager meet, they're instructed just one of them types up the tag and sends it to the other person to say we've met. And the advantage of that is you get it gets sent between the two people. It gets date stamped in the system to show, hey, we met on this day and this is what we discussed. So let's go back and cycle back to something we looked at earlier. Let's go back to, say Harlan's quarterly review form. Well, now we can really get into some interesting things because we could be talking about goals and objectives. We could be meeting and doing what we call check-in notes. And with check-in notes, we're just adding comments in boxes here, okay? But now look what we can also do. Not only are we meeting, we're talking about objectives, we're doing check-in notes, but we're actually starting to compile feedback that's happened through the continuous feedback application in here too to support all of this. And all of a sudden, we've moved that paradigm quite a bit. So, this is a big, big part of what we talk about in continuous feedback. And I like this from the point of view that, as I said before, it's really more along the positive side. Now, if we think about other things that happen in the cycle of performance review, we've got to think about things like, okay, there can be times when people need development. There can be times when people are not meeting expectations. And so one of the real strong flexibilities of emPerform is that you can design forms around any subject. You can design forms around any process here. Typically, you're going to want to do it as they relate to performance because at its heart, this is a performance management system. So let me give you, for instance, we also do things like performance improvement plans. And in this case, with a performance improvement plan, I've got one here for Michael. So I've got a note, it's been launched, I'm the manager, I got to go in and complete this performance improvement plan. Let's take a look at this. When I go into it, first step at the top of the page, it's asking for some manager comments. Then it's going to cycle it to the employee and move us through some check-ins to ensure that we address the performance improvement initiatives that Michael needs to attain. So there's some instructions here that I'm going to go through and read about. And then what I've got to do is go to the performance improvement plan section itself, and I've got to document the issues. Now, you can do this a few ways, but one of the popular ways to do it is just to group up the type of issues. So you come in and select the type of issues that are here, and then what happens is it drops it on this page, and you'd click on it, and you just add some details around it. So let's do a summary of the behavior issue. Let's talk about future expectations and any follow-up dates that are required. And again, I think this is, just a really simple and easy thing to fill out. It automates this. It's going to notify Michael as soon as I submit it like this and send it to the employee for review. Like everything in emPerform, people are kept on track by email reminders. So Michael's going to get an email that lets him know, his manager's opened up a performance improvement plan. He needs to log in, needs to provide feedback. HR will also be electronically notified that this is happening. You're going to get an email in HR as well to tell you that a performance improvement plan has been initiated on Michael, and you'll have full view into what's happening. And if you want some formal steps in there that, HR reviews the performance improvement plan before it goes to the employee, we've got organizations that do that, and you can have that in here. But the idea here is that we automate this PIP so that, again, it's part of the performance management history. And if we think about this and we think about Michael's profile and we go to a view full profile, what will happen is that when that performance improvement plan is completed, it will become part of his performance review history. And that means it will follow him. And, it'll be there both for himself to see and for a manager and future managers. So, again, this is all about just keeping this performance up to date and accurate and really bringing it to life. And so again, just a really important part of what we do here. Now, I can't stress enough the forms flexibility that's built into emPerform. We do not put people in a vanilla appraisal and say, all of our clients have to do this the same way. It's in fact the exact opposite. Our clients usually come to us with an idea of what they want to do. We've got all kinds of samples. We ship the product, of course, with all kinds of samples, but you have full capability to author and design review forms and processes that encourage continuous feedback in a structured or unstructured manner as you like. It's up to you to be able to have that capability. And again, I could just show you something interesting here as we click around. Here's a completely different form, one that's done on a very simple basis. At the end of the year, when you come in to do a review, you simply add your accomplishments. Okay, you list them out in your accomplishments section here. You just add what you did. You could say, we're going to do an assessment of competencies. So, we'll go in and we'll look at competencies, and when we read about the competency, it can have a description or observable behaviors. We can even provide writing assistance to help managers and employees with the feedback and help them understand the rating to provide. And then maybe you give an overall performance review score where you just come in here and give an overall rating and say, I think this person is a certain rating area or a certain level, and that's what you do. So again, the simple form, really easy to use, and just another example of the different types of forms that you can use in emPerform. And so this really brings us to a close on sort of ongoing feedback and online appraisals. I think the key with us, as we said at the beginning, is that lots of flexibility here to design forms that you want, make it part of a bigger process, bring in all these benefits of ongoing feedback. And, that's what we talk about when we go through emPerform. So I'm just going to take a quick second here to see if what questions we have. If any questions have come in, if you do have questions, feel free to add them in the question pane. And I'm just going to go through and take a quick look and answer any questions that we have. So there is a question here about journaling and tag and how that works. And the person said, I think I joined in late, but what's the difference between a journal and a tag that you showed earlier? And how does that affect the performance process? So great question. A journal is something in emPerform language that is a performance journal that's private and confidential to the person making it. And in the context of emPerform, a tag is true continuous feedback. It means you're sending feedback to another person. They're able to read it. They're able to use it to support their own appraisal. And they're able to share it with managers, and that's where they separate. The important part is, as HR, you can also determine whether you want journals or tags ultimately to be part of the performance review itself, because you can add them in there as well. And another question here says, are all of the forms initiated and sent out by HR? And my quick answer to that question, I'm just going to get to this one because I know we're getting close to our time up. No. HR can send out a big batch of performance appraisal and performance review documents. However, emPerform also allows you to have employees and managers open and initiate documents, as you like. So for instance, if you want to create a performance improvement plan, you can say, I'm going to allow managers to launch this. Or you might say only HR can launch it. But there's functionality to say, not only HR launches these forms, but other people can launch the forms as well. So listen, this is what we wanted to cover today on online appraisals and continuous feedback. I encourage you to check back on future sessions that we're doing and watch out for those coffee gift cards. And certainly if you want to learn more about our product and see it end to end, there is a lot of stuff here under the hood in emPerform. We'd be happy to take you through a demonstration. So please reach out, contact us, info@employee-performance.com. Thanks very much, and we hope to see you at the next session. Bye-bye.